Just a gentle note before we begin, today's conversation includes discussion of anxiety, overthinking, self-doubt and caregiver stress. Please listen in a way that feels supportive for you. You're welcome to pause and come back at any time. There's a kind of caregiver stress that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like doing the school run, answering the specialist emails, packing the bag, making the call, and then later, in the quiet, your brain won't switch off. It's the replay, the what if I miss something, that I should have said, that if I don't stay on top of this, everything will fall apart. And what makes it harder is that caregivers often don't just carry the situation, they carry the story about the situation. The story that says, I'm failing, I'm behind, I should cope better than this, I have to be the steady one. Today's guest is here to help us separate what's real from what the mind is adding, not by forcing positivity, but by learning how to question your thoughts gently, so we can create a little more space inside the day. Mette Reebirk is the author of The Tipping Point. Life force comes from questioning your thoughts. She's an executive coach with more than 20 years of experience, helping people move through anxiety, overthinking and self-doubt. And her work is deeply relevant for caregivers who are holding it together in hard rooms and paying for it afterwards. This episode is for the caregiver who can't stop thinking and wants relief that doesn't require pretending things are fine. Mette, welcome to Radiant Moments.
Thank you so much, my dear.
I'd like to start our conversation with giving our listeners a grounded space to know who you are and where you came from. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to this journey and why you do this with such passion?
Yes. Growing older, you start to wonder a little. A lot of my clients, they are on the paper very successful business people. And still they are doubting whether their parents have been proud of them, especially men and their dads. And then at a certain point, I started to think, what is it? The stories that they're telling themselves, where do they come from? And what is a thought actually? And what is a feeling? Because all those guys, and also myself, I'm a mom, 3 kids, very old parents, a mom with dementia. I lost my twin brother when we were 23. So I also have a lot of stories. And what is a story created from? So around 6 years ago, I started to dive into our mind, our brain, our mind, and what is a thought and what is an emotion. And what I came to understand is not something that I have invented. Thousands of years from now in the story, people actually know it, the wise people. I got to understand that we have around 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. And we have not one emotion without a thought that has created it. And all those emotions that we can feel, heart beating and this something going on in the stomach and the whole body kind of closes down. What if the body is trying to tell us that what we are believing about reality may not be totally true? But actually, we have been brought up in the belief that it's a little the opposite. So when we can feel something, then it must be true because I can feel it. And then we keep on trying to find the proof of what we believe to be true. And that means that we keep on to this emotion of not feeling well. So around 6 years ago, I started really to dive into this. A couple of years ago, I wrote my book, The Tipping Point, and then asked me, who am I? I'm actually the one observing what's landing on my plate, my titles, my age, even my gender. It's not really who I am. It's what I do. So at the moment, I started to see that I didn't need to keep onto a thought. I could let it go. My life started to become much nicer, much kinder. So I'm actually the screen where a lot of different kinds of movies are played on. And I'm the one getting this amazing experience being on Earth, experiencing all what lands on my plate. Yeah. So that's a little who I am.
Thank you so much for telling us about what's brought you to supporting people around the world to help with their thoughts and how you see your journey as not the person that you and your body, but what you're actually providing to those in need. And I'd like to talk about what you actually mean when you say we're not held captive by chains, but by the stories we tell ourselves. You talked a little bit about how our emotions only come from the stories that are within us. How do you define the story? Is it the thoughts, identity? Is it meaning making? Or all?
Identity, that's also a story. Our thoughts, it's not that thoughts are bad. They're kind of helping us designing what we are experiencing here on Earth. So thoughts are, it's a little like clouds on the sky. Sometimes there are small, white, sweet clouds that look like animals, and sometimes it's totally overclouded. But beyond the clouds, the sky is always blue. So when we have those, we are out bicycling, and then we have something going on. We tell ourselves, "Oh, there we have a red car, and there we." And I also need to remember that. Boom, and I was not very nice this morning towards my kids because I didn't sleep well. All those things, voices going on. It's thoughts. But because we kind of need our thoughts, it gives us a kind of security. We're here. It makes something a little abstract, maybe a little less abstract. Me being on a bicycle on this little earth in the universe, we are nothing. So when we have those stories going on, I also think that maybe it makes us feel a little more secure. But it's interesting because when I meet you, do I actually meet you? No, I don't think so. I meet you through my story about you. That means that I actually meet myself. So when I try to empty my head, then I maybe can meet you more genuine and being curious about you. But I need to become aware of what's going on in my own head and in my own storytelling about you so that I can let go of that and meet you. And it also changes. When you were 5 years old, there's nothing left of you from that point except your consciousness. All your cells have been recharged a couple of times, many times, actually, I believe. So there's nothing really, everything changes all the time. But what doesn't really change is you being aware of what's going on just in front of you. Does it make sense?
Yes. So each part of ourselves that has grown and developed over time, the thoughts, our identity, and how we actually interact with those are actually creating the story when we meet somebody new. When we're thinking about a situation that happened during the day, how we may have forgotten something, and the things that we have experienced become the narrative rather than taking it at face value without any predetermined markers that we've come across in our lives. And I know that you wrote that these stories often begin as a way to survive. Can you speak to that with coming from a compassionate standpoint, how a story can be protective at first and can actually become limiting later in life?
Yes. Maybe as a child you were abused, and this experience that you had as a child, maybe even over several years. The good thing about the past, it is actually that it's the past. It's over. It doesn't exist. You can even maybe have difficulties proving that it has existed. But if you keep on to this story, I was abused, I'm a victim, in the future and in the present moment, then that is how you will see yourself in life. But if I ask you, are you okay? You're sitting in your chair, this moment, this present moment, you're sitting in your chair. You have just had breakfast. Everything is fine. It's warm. It's lovely. You're not being abused. But if you can see that that's a story, it's over. And you can let go of that, because the only thing you can lose is actually a story. That's the only thing you can lose in whatsoever. But it's so difficult because you said something about, the identity. Sometimes you turn your stories into your identity. I am this victim of the abuse that I had to suffer when I was a child. And then even that it was awful to think about and to live through also when it's over and done, you keep onto it because it feels even safer with this story than without the story. Because without the story, who am I? If I'm not this victim, or if I let go of this story, then do I justify what happened? So when we let go of something that happened in the past, then we can actually, what is the problem? And then at that moment, there will be one less war in the world, because then you are not in war with yourself. And I can tell you one thing, we do not need more wars in the world. That's a craziness. But sometimes we are so busy keeping on to a story that we believe to define who we are, that we are in war with ourselves. And also in Denmark, where I'm from, I think all over the world, so many kids, they have a lot of diagnoses, almost like if they are born sick or broken, but no one is born broken. And we, the grown-ups, with all the stories that we have, we are not broken either. We just believe we are. And when we see that we can let go of it, or even when we become very good at it, the stories, they will leave us. And then we can experience life in a much kinder way.
Yes, definitely. And I think by viewing it that it's not you doing something wrong, at the time it helped you to survive, and now it's no longer helping you to survive. It may actually be costing you and your interactions in your world and your interactions with yourself. And I want to bring this directly into caregiving, because our audience isn't just dealing with internal stress and the internal debate with themselves on a day-to-day basis. They're also dealing with really high stakes world moments as a caregiver, because they are looking after somebody's life. They're responsible for that life continuing, especially when they have high medical needs, where they're peg fed on a trach, they've had a brain injury and they can't walk or talk. So they're fully reliant on that person. What are the most common thought loops that you see in caregivers, the ones that create like that second layer of suffering? So say they have had a tough life coming up. There's this additional layer when we add on the responsibilities and the stories that we need to uphold this level in order to care, be seen, be heard, and advocate. So I can give you some examples to support my question. So some of the second layers is like, I should be able to do more. If I rest, I'm selfish. If I don't hold it together, everything will fall apart. If I had pushed harder, or if I knew more about the situation, or I noticed it sooner, I can't do this. How do I help someone distinguish between a practical thought, like I need a plan, and an identity verdict, I'm failing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you mentioned if I had or I should have. So in the concrete situation, without those thoughts, how would you act? I think that you would act just fine, both with heart and with the knowledge you have about exactly how to deal with this specific issue that may be on the table. And all what you mentioned was in the past, but we are now in the present moment. So when we kind of leave the present moment, the problem starts. And it's interesting because potential problems in the future, or a problem tomorrow, all problems will eventually be solved in the present moment. I cannot solve a problem today, now, that may or may not arise tomorrow. Right? If I'm so busy trying to deal with problems that may or may not arise tomorrow, today, then something very valuable I will miss, because I will not see what is going on in the present moment. And that is actually the only thing that exists. And this present moment will kind of be the foundation of the next moment. So if I'm never really present, I will not be very prepared for the future, because I will not see. I'm blind. And I can see, for instance, with my mom, she suffered from dementia after she had a stroke, and she's almost 90. And my father is also 90. Lovely people. And of course, it has been very difficult for my dad that she had to move to a lovely place. And actually, she's okay. It's interesting because, for instance, she has always had a problem with her sister. But this story about her sister, it's gone. So now when her sister is visiting her, it's just this lovely lady. She came by today, right? And my father, it has taken some time for him to realize that, because he thought that he should take care of her and that he had a bad conscience because he couldn't do it any longer the way it should be done. When he kind of has seen that when I let go of this story, I should have been capable of, then he visits my mom every day. He has much more energy. They can go for small walks and they have fun, and he has slept well in the night because he should not worry about what is she now going to find to do. He has been very creative. But when we are not kind of making up a war, because we have this policy in our head, I should have, I could have. But when we let go of all that, become aware of this conversation, can I be sure I should have done this and that? Can I be 100% sure? Yes. If so, I would have done it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So again, what's the problem? There is no problem. We make up problems. And then we believe that we should do that because I'm a responsible grown-up. I'm a caregiver. Yeah. you're not a very good caregiver towards yourself. And can you be a good caregiver to others if you are not a good caregiver to yourself? It's a question.
And I guess there's that, if you don't care for yourself and you fall down, then who is there to care for the person that you have been loving and caring for? And I guess that kind of internalized thought pattern that is keeping us in fight, flight, or freeze mode, particularly if we're analyzing what has happened in the past and then pre-planning for what could happen in the future in these situations. What is happening in the body when a caregiver believes a painful thought is truth, and why does it feel so convincing?
Because you can feel it, and because you've been taught that when you're born, first of all, to be born as you, that is exceptional rare. If we make a little statistics, if that I should be born like me, Mette, it's almost not existing. So, okay, I get this amazing present being born, even though that it should be not possible, kind of. And then I believe that when we are grown up, we are kind of also taught that all questions are to be found outside of ourselves regarding having a nice, successful life, education and a good man and wife and a good job, a house, nice car. And then when you have all that, then you're lucky or happy. But you can have not, you can have been very rich, have whatever, and still not feel very happy because you are looking in the wrong place. So when you become aware of that your happiness is not really related to what you have, but how you experience the present moment, then you see that you have everything. And there's also another issue, because sometimes we also very innocently come to believe that for us to be feeling happy or in harmony, we need people around us, our family, to act in a certain way. Our kids should not be sick. Our parents should not grow old and have dementia. But it's a little like wanting to teach a dog how to say like a cat. By the end of the day, the dog will say, "Wow," and not meow. So when we believe something should be different than it is, then life really becomes complicated. And that is what life becomes all the time.
Yes, complicated.
Yeah. But life in itself, in its core, is not complicated. But sometimes we need really to get to understand, and finally we get to understand what we are here to learn. That the universe is actually kind. Every time I have been worried about this and that, afterwards I can see that everything kind of turned out okay. Not how I thought it should have turned out, but it turned out all right.
So when we believe a painful thought, or we believe an unfriendly thought about ourselves, the reason why it feels so convincing in our body is because of the chemicals that are released from the old stories, the cortisol, the adrenaline, because our body was in survival mode in that moment, and we haven't basically recalibrated or rebooted our nervous system from that moment. And we have to be able to pause, breathe, and then reevaluate our situation if our nervous system is on high alert. So if a situation happened where we were in fight or flight, our body thought we were about to go to war, and then the situation that occurs today, there isn't a war, but our body is replaying that because we have a pattern of thoughts. So it's so important for caregivers to feel like what you're saying is they don't need to be ashamed of their thoughts. They need a way to relate to them differently.
They should definitely not be ashamed of it, because they are not really in control of that. Thoughts, they come and go. When we get to a point where we just can notice it, it will pass. And the emotion that it maybe got to touch in us will maybe last 45 seconds, and then it will pass. And when we know that we don't need to keep onto it because it doesn't define us, then we can just observe it like an anthropologue. Okay, interesting. And then let it go. And then again, every time we become kind of insecure, then back to present, this concrete moment. Am I okay? Yes, I'm okay. And then also, if we need to, then question, okay, I believed I should have. Then ask yourself the question, am I 100% sure that I should have whatsoever? 100% sure? Maybe not. Okay, without this thought in this concrete moment, I'm standing here, I'm hug my child who has been having something because of something. Is it okay? Yes, it's okay. Also, people around you can feel this kind of peace you have, because it can be, maybe they do not have this peace, but they need the peace from you. It's really a job of introspection, looking into yourself, not looking for answers outside of you. The authorities should have been, the society should have, who should have. No, you should. So every time you start to judge what's outside of you, how does that kind of relate to you? And of course, that is a little annoying because then you cannot blame the others. You have to take on the responsibility. And maybe you think, I'm a caregiver, I have enough responsibility. But again, my experience is kind of that life becomes easier and kind. And then at that moment, actually, the kids starts to help cleaning up and my boss starts to listen to what I'm saying because I'm listening to myself. I treat myself in a proper way.
So the compassionate way to meet yourself isn't to argue with the thought that you're having or the emotion that you're having, especially if the thoughts are harsh or shameful, but it's to recognize your current surroundings, recognize what the thought is stacking on top of the situation that you have currently, and pausing.
It's a little like it's always sitting on your knee, telling you this. When you become aware of what's going on, you can say, okay, hello, I have listened enough to you. Go up to your room. And if you really want it to come back, you can invite it back. But just observe it to your room. I have other things to attend to. But to reach that point, you need to become aware. And you also need to be a little courageous because you need to be willing to stay a little in a place where the feeling may not be very nice, shameful. That's a feeling created by a thought about something. Not afraid of what you're feeling, even though that it may feel very physically. That will pass. And after a certain while, then it's not you that will let go. It's actually the feeling that will let go of you.
So the emotions that are associated with it will become dissipated when you're able to observe and be aware of yourself, introspection, go into oneself. And I know that you speak about finding inner peace, and caregiving is often such a long haul relationship with uncertainty. Regardless of not knowing, for a caregiver who lives in medical uncertainty or behavioral unpredictability, what does it look like in reality for finding inner peace in that, I guess, turmoil or chaos or crisis mode that often can be found when you're managing complex needs?
It's interesting. I'm married to Benny, a lovely man, for many, many years. And then sometimes I ask him, he's sitting and looking out of the window or whatever, what are you thinking about? And then he said, nothing, nothing. That's not possible. So and then just a little funny thing. He said, but I have a room. I have some space up here where there's actually nothing. But many women, when they have a room where there's nothing, they start to decorate. So I have come to see that we all have kind of a room in our mind where there's nothing, totally empty. And we do not need to decorate it. And some find it by meditating. And I do not meditate, actually. I have tried and I'm not very good at it. But I have found out that when I become still, and then I look for what is between my thoughts, there's actually nothing. My husband is a musician, and he says that the music starts between the notes in the pauses. And that is actually what I have found out as a human being, that inner peace, it's in between the thoughts. So when we become curious about that, we get to see it and feel it.
So observing the spaces between the thoughts, the pauses, provide us with the pathway to finding more inner peace.
Yeah, and it may sound a little weird, but when we become curious about it, we get to see that it's a little like you go to a cinema, you see a film. One day you see a love story, and the next day maybe a very war future something. And then afterwards, when the film is over, you go to the screen and you touch the screen, and it's totally fine. It's not broken. You cannot feel that there has just been blood and a lot of awful things going on. And it's like you are this screen. So regardless of what happens, when the story passes afterwards, there's nothing. The screen is fine. So if you can think about that and be curious about that, then you can get to see it small steps by small steps.
I like that analogy of the movies. I think it puts it into something that is tangible to recognize, is that we can go from love, kindness, and into this chaos, but that nothing is broken. It's just a movie playing for us. And that if we can change the way we view the perspective of our nervous system's reaction, of the experiences that we have, to find the space in between to process, to be able to recognize that I wasn't in an actual war and I am okay. That could help somebody, a caregiver, somebody listening who feels like the damage has been done to them. And it's not that they're broken. It's not that they've done anything wrong. It's just that they need to take that pause to be kind to themselves and to recognize that it was a hard thing to have to witness, or it was a hard moment, but that hard moment didn't cause me harm. It didn't cause the world to fall apart like my nervous system is telling me. And I'd love to look at one small way a caregiver can come back to themselves during those hard days when their mind wants to replay everything. Is there a trick or a small win that they could use to stop it in its tracks or to dampen it so that it's not so intense? So, for example, they've been in an emergency room. Their loved one has had to have IVs. They've had to be held down because they're panicking. They're trying to recall all of their things that they need for their loved one to receive the right care. So a hard day is not only having to witness another person's distress, but having to contain yourself and be calm, because in those hard rooms, you can be very much judged, reported on if you are too emotional, not emotional enough, not having the ability to advocate in that space. And when we leave that intense environment where we've had to interact with 20 different medical professionals, nurses, specialists, consultants, registrars, learning doctors, that is the reality of the medical space, we replay things. I forgot to tell them this, or I didn't go and order that medication that I was meant to do today because this crisis happened. And so they replay the moments that fill them with trepidation, anxiety, where they've been judged previously. Did I speak too firmly? Did I not? Did I speak too quickly? Was I sounding monotone enough? Because those things are reported on often when you're a caregiver or a mother or a father and your loved one is in the room, is how your behavior comes across. And so the example would be, after we've left, we've come home or we've got to the car, we've broken down in tears because your adrenaline was going, you felt like you were at war. And then as you're driving, little things come up that you thought, I should have said that to the doctor. I should have been more assertive in this moment. And they replay what went wrong in order to get home, basically, in order to get home and then find peace. But those areas where we get criticized on, or where we've been judged on previously, or if they've resulted in our loved one being harmed in some way, how do we quieten the mind or pause it or be more observant rather than reliving it? Because when that happens and the replay happens, our nervous system re-engages and we're back in that kind of space. And we're very judgy of ourselves. We don't praise all of the good things that we did in the room. We don't replay, I really managed that interaction with that doctor really well. I have no replay for that. It's only the things that we felt didn't go 100%. Or we felt that the tone was wrong, and that brought up a story, as we were talking about. Does that make sense? Does that example give you context?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to me is that it's not really about you. It's about your child and all those people who wants to do their utmost to help your child in this specific situation. And what you said or what you did not say, that is not really interesting. So if you let go of what people believe onto you that you may not know again, because maybe for those people around your child, if they also have their own stories, their own families, their own worries, and actually they may not really worry about if you said this or that. So when you let go of the need of controlling what other people in that specific situation believe onto you, then you can be present and having this energy and this consciousness towards your child, instead of believing that you need to be in a certain way for those around to believe that you are capable of being a good caregiver. In your heart that you are an amazing caregiver. That's enough. And then again, also have a little faith in the universe and in the people that actually maybe try their very best and have been working 12 hours when you get in with work child or with whatever, if you look at them in that way, you may see that they look very tired, and maybe a smile from you can give them a little courage. When you let go, you do not need other people to judge you. You let go of that because that doesn't define you. You do not need their approval. You do your utmost, and that's more than good enough. And actually, even though so many so far away from you, I can feel you. And if you should take care of me, I would be in the very best hands. And other people, they don't care. They are so busy with their own storytelling. So when you do not need them to do whatever that can prove your own story about what you believe to be true, you can meet them where they are and not where you are. So I would really recommend that you let go of this need and then just meet them with a smile and gratefulness that they are trying to do what they're good at.
So live in your honesty and your truth that you have been and continue to be a devoted, loving caregiver who's doing their best in the situation, just like the person who is in the space with you. And I always like to come back before we finish and ask, what message would you most want to leave with the caregiver who feels trapped in their own story right now?
Don't believe everything you think to be true. Stop up and then be honest towards yourself also when you judge others. When judging the people around, how does that actually also tells you something about you? But again, really question your thoughts. Can this really be 100% true? And without this thought in this concrete moment, how am I? I'm pretty okay. And then your surroundings, they will feel it. And this is how your world is changing. It starts with questioning one thought. And when you do not need to believe this thought, suddenly the world changes.
I really like how kind you're presenting this direction for oneself, the kindness, the grace, the compassion for oneself, so that you can then show up in a more settled, calm, controlled in yourself, like internally, so you don't feel like you're in turmoil or fighting an uphill battle with your nervous system. And I'd love our listeners to know a little bit about where they can find you, how they can read your book and find out more about your services. Mette, would you be able to share that with us?
Find me on LinkedIn, and I will love to link with everyone. If you have questions, just write me on LinkedIn. And my book, The Tipping Point, can be found on Amazon, and it's in English.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure that all of your links are in the show notes for people to access, so they don't have to go searching for you. They can just click the link to connect. Mette, thank you for bringing such a calm and compassionate lens to something caregivers live with every single day. Not just the hard reality, but the harsh stories that can attach to it. Today, we've talked about why our thoughts can become a second layer of suffering, how to question them without denying the reality that they're feeling, and how to meet uncertainty without collapsing into control. And tiny ways to interrupt the loop and come back to yourself. If you're listening and your mind is telling you you're failing, I want you to hear this. You're not failing. You're carrying a lot, and you deserve support that doesn't require you to perform, pretend, or push through. To everyone listening, thank you for spending this time with us. You don't have to hold it all alone. I'm Michelle, and this is Radiant Moments Caregiver Oasis. Until next time, take gentle care of your radiant moments and of yourself.